So I guess we can start now. Hello everyone, I hope you guys are doing well. My name is Mohammed bin Zahir and I work at Consoli Ads. Consoli Ads is a mobile ad mediation platform and we help mobile game and app publishers earn increased revenue, which is courtesy of our intelligent mediation platform. For more details, you can visit our website, which is www.consoliads.com. So today's webinar is primarily focused towards creating awareness among the small and medium game publishers, and also to have a look back at the ever-evolving mobile gaming industry. Now we know that mobile gaming industry has slowly um, taken over all of the other mobile gaming platforms, and over the last few years, the pace has been quite a lot. So we thought we should, help our audience understand this journey, and how can we, you guys share your experience. So that's why we have very experienced and distinguished speakers in this webinar. Another target of this webinar is to, spread among awareness um, in, among the small and medium-sized game publishers to understand what mistakes that they usually make, and what learnings that you guys had over the course of your careers in the gaming industry, so that they can not avoid those mistakes and work towards having a very healthy and profitable products that they're making. So I have David McCann with me. He's the CEO at Mini Mammoth Games, and he's from Australia. David, what are your thoughts on today's webinar?
Yeah, it sounds like a good time. It's always important to talk to others and help spread the word.
Great. Then we have Kaash Passive. He's the CTO at Content Arcade. He's based out of Pakistan. Kaash, please tell us about your expectations from today's webinar.
Hello, this is me, Kaash Passive. I work at Content Arcade. From today's webinar, I'm totally expecting to learn many things on in different dynamics. I mean, say, I would like to thank you, Mohammed, to arrange such a webinar so that we guys can discuss the common issues we all of us usually face while working in the gaming industry. And I'm really hopeful that we get something positive out of today's webinar. And I'm expecting good things. Let's see. I mean, I'm really hopeful here.
Great. And then finally, we have Irfan Yusuf. He's the Director of Product Development at Gen Team Solutions. He's also based out of Pakistan. Irfan, are you excited for today's session?
Yeah, absolutely excited. I think it's going to be a wonderful session, and I would love to share my experience.
Great. I think let's start the discussion. So I'll start by mentioning a brief summary or the flow of the today's webinar. So we'll be talking about the history and we'll be mentioning some of the famous mobile games over the course of time. Then we'll be discussing some challenges and some of the opportunities that there exist in the industry. So I'll start by briefly talking about the mobile gaming industry in general. I think in 2020, smartphone games accounted for almost 50% of the gaming revenues, and this number has already reached 52% in 2021 till now. As mobile penetration and smartphone usage increases, I think this revenue number is expected to cross $100 billion mark in 2022. Thanks to pandemic, we have accelerated growth in terms of mobile game users, and the number of users are quite high compared to what they used to be in the previous years, or the growth percentage is quite high. So if I start by mentioning some of the famous mobile games, the most famous one that comes to my mind is Nokia's Snake, right? So in 1998, I think in today's world, if you mention Snake, it would be, I think, categorized into the genre of hyper casual games. But back then there were no categories, and it was the most coolest game that there was. And with over, I think, 350 million players around the world, I think this was the game that really paved the way for the mobile gaming industry. If I read a little more into the history, I think Japan was the first country to commercialize the mobile games. Then Asia, Europe, North America, and rest of the world followed suit, wherever smartphones were available at that time. And then Apple launched its App Store, which dramatically changed the whole landscape of the gaming industry. We had colorful screens, consumer behaviors were starting to get studied, and almost everyone that had a smartphone started to download and play games. So as the phones got smarter, I think the games did too. Uh, so the next, uh, so let's take a pause here and let me ask a fun question to you guys. David, what is your most memorable game that you can recall?
Actually, so I paid universal paper clips on my phone, not on
Right.
computer. So the
Mhm.
idea of taking a paperclip company and taking over the universe was a pretty good time. I enjoyed it. It took me a day. It was good.
What about you, Kashif?
As far as I remember, the most favorite and memorable game of mine was it was not a mobile game actually, but it was the console-based, the Atari games. It was Super Mario back in early 90s. It was Super Mario. Then it was available over the mobile, but the charm was not the same as it was on the console-based games. But yes, it was introduced on mobile, and that was my most memorable game from my childhood.
Great, great. What about you, Rizwan?
Well, I didn't have any console until I was like 28 years old. So I used to play games on friends' consoles, or I have to go to the market and play on a local mobile gaming
Arcade.
shop. So that, usually the most memorable games are from your childhood, or so I remember that the game that I remember most is Snow Bros. Uh,
Yeah,
and yeah, so that was like
great.
wonderful experience. That's what we started playing first.
Yeah, yeah. I also remember Snow Bros. And it was quite
Yeah,
addictive, to be honest.
absolutely.
Yeah, almost all of us remember that game, Snow Bros. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Why not? Street Fighter and whatnot. That was the
yeah.
era of games. Yeah, great to know. And I think we would also like to ask our audience if they can mention their most memorable games as well. We'd love to know what they think about their most famous and fun-loving game. Okay, so if I move ahead in terms of mobile gaming industry, I think the next most popular game that I can recall in terms of quality and popularity was Angry Birds back in 2009. I think this game needs to be mentioned because I think this is the first game that incorporated physics into the gaming analytics and mechanics. So, you know, with the use of slingshot, you can send some weird-looking birds to break the walls and objects and whatnot. And I think since it's launched in 2009, it has been continuing to shake the mobile gaming industry, and it still has quite a lot of downloads every single day. So it shows that when you make good quality games, there are chances that you might sustain some good amount of downloads as well. But the important point to note here is that with the introduction of this game, the physics thing into the games was adopted by other players as well, and then we had some good games coming into the industry. The next game that I'd like to mention in 2011 was Temple Run. I think this game introduced a new genre in the industry, which was one of a kind and very good smooth graphics and the concept of endless running. And I think although it was very popular at its own time, but I think it paved the way for other games. And now we have Subway Surfer, which is probably following the same genre and design sort of, and has probably more downloads than any other game. I was checking the stats, and I think it has crossed the 1 billion download mark already. Subway Surfer. So I think, like I said before, the important point of discussion is the introduction of physics in the game, so that we have more lifelike, graphics and more lifelike effects in the games. So my question here is to you, Rizwan. You were a part of the mobile gaming industry during this time. Were there any challenges back there in terms of technology, tools, and overall thought process of making mobile games? Because you're from Pakistan, and I believe that Pakistan did not have enough resources back then. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Geniteam actually started in 2008, and we started developing games for mobile as soon as the first iPhone was out.
Right.
So it was like 2009-10 when we started developing our first game for web and later on for mobiles. It was called Gang Wars. It was like a social role-playing game, you can say, pretty much like Mafia Wars at that time, which was very popular on Facebook. Uh, we had many challenges. The first challenge was that we didn't have any game designers in Pakistan. We
True.
ourselves were not trained as a game designers at that time,
Hmm.
and we didn't know how to actually make the game. What are the technologies or tools that we can use? So we had a decent learning curve before we can actually go and start building the game. Once we started building the game, it was like myself and my CEO Kuram that we had to actually started coding that game. Once it was up to the scale where we two were not enough, we tried to hire some engineers, but uh, people were not interested in game development at that time. Most of them were not sure that this is actually a career-oriented job, so they
Yeah.
were not really into the game development. Luckily, we managed to hire a few people who were like enthusiasts about games, and they wanted to work in the game development. The next challenge was that we were not sure which tools and technologies we should use at that time. Unity was not that much popular. Actually, it wasn't actually available at that time. It was in pre-beta, I think. So we had to decide which engine we have to use. We tried and engine and couple of other gaming engines, and then settled down on one thing. Our game was like it's a server-based game. So
Hmm.
at that time we has a decent DAU, or like daily average users, around like 100,000 daily average users at that time. So the next challenge was the scalability and handling the server side. Luckily, AWS came to rescue us.
Yeah.
So and then we started building on AWS. Wasted lots of money on scaling the AWS objects in the early times, as we didn't know how to actually control the traffic. So these
Yeah.
were the like the basic challenges that we have to face.
I think you had a pretty good learning curve based on the details that you just shared. Because I think when you go through those rough patches and you learn through the hard way, I think that learning, stays with you for a long time. And I think you guys must be using those learnings in today as well.
Yes, absolutely,
David,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So, David, I wanted to ask you, you belong to a relatively better or a developed country at that time. So, did you also have the same challenges, or industry in general were also the learnings were also the same?
So you're talking about 2012, 2013?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in 2012 and 2013, I had just graduated uni,
Mm.
and the local game development scene in South Australia in particular was decimated by the global financial crisis. Ran a bunch of studios out and they shut down. So
Mhm.
I tried to make a studio, but I didn't know what I was doing. So that was a good time. In
Mhm.
that case, like I think we started using Unity in like 2014, but it was very rough at that time. There wasn't
Yeah.
much resources for us.
So, okay, great. Okay, so moving on, I think in 2012, in the same area that David mentioned, I think uh, there was a game launched by the name of Clash of Clans, and I think that's where the real time strategy based games paved their way through the mobile gaming industry. I think we
Mhm.
had Age of Empires and Command and Conquer already existing on the consoles, but not so much in the mobile gaming industry. So this game was primarily, responsible for introducing this genre in the gaming mobile gaming scene, and this was followed by a number of other similar titles as well. So the important point was that this was also a genre that was missing in the mobile gaming industry, and someone took the idea and then uh, launched this game. So again, a very good approach from some of the game developers, that they still continue to launch such games because of the multiplayer option that is available primarily due to
Well,
these type
actually,
of games.
at that time,
Yeah.
social RPG games were already there on mobile, but
Mhm.
they weren't as good as Clash of Clans. So the
Yeah.
strength of Clash of Clans was their social features, plus the 3D part, that you can actually see the things happening, see the things building. Um,
Yeah.
the other games didn't have that part. They had the social part, but they didn't have that part where you can see things happening actually on the real time. So that's what actually what make Clash of Clans special.
Yeah, that's right. And then we had an aberration, sort of, some guy out of nowhere thought about making a game which was playable by one hand, and it was called Flappy Bird. Do you guys remember this game?
Yeah,
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 Absolutely,
it
yeah,
absolutely.
took the gaming industry
absolutely.
by storm. Yeah, both in terms of downloads and revenues. And I usually, when I think about this, I think I usually get blown by the idea that some guy thought of this idea that why not make retro graphics in this world where you have graphics is the ultimate race of your quality of the game. Someone decides to launch a retro graphics games, and there I think introduce a new again design of the gaming industry, that you know you can also launch games in the retro graphics arena. But I think it's still a very niche category. Not everyone follows this route. People usually focus on better graphics because that is the more popular way to go about it among the mobile games. And then we also have PUBG, now launched in 2017. I think this is the recent most popular game that I can think of. People have been going mad about its popularity. The players are always increasing in terms of revenue. It has crossed the $1 billion mark already, and crossed the billion downloads as well. So my question here to you, Kashif, I think we have talked about multiple genres so far. So, according to you, which one is more popular? And as a game publisher, can you keep a balance between which one to follow, and what quantity should be there, and again the quality, because we talked about graphics as well.
Yeah. You just talked about Flappy Bird. I mean, I have never seen a game growing that quickly without any solid advertisement. Flappy Bird grew in numbers. I mean, just within few days. So it was the time when everyone was busy making Clash of Clans and games like Candy Crush, and everyone was busy making big games. A person just came up with an idea making a game with retro graphic. It was out of the box. It was out of the world at that time. No one was making actually that game. So that game caught the eye, and it got popular over a span of very few days.
Yeah.
So talking about now 2020 or 2021, it's the same time that everyone is making hyper casual games. Right after the Flappy Bird, the trend was I still remember working for a company who used to make 5 or 6 clones of Flappy Bird every day and launch it on Play Store and App Store. They were making a lot of clones. Now it is the same time again that people are all of them, all of us are after hyper casual games, and no one is, I mean, coming up with something different. Everyone is trying to make a game which are already published on Play Store or App Store, or someone is trying to make a game which is hyper casual, but again it comes from the same line of thought and same school of thought and same that narrow hole. It is all that you have to play the game by single tap. So this is the dilemma of the gaming industry, especially in Pakistan. If we talk about our local industry, so every company who thinks to come into gaming industry, they just come up with the hyper casual games which are already bombarded. App stores are already bombarded with lots of hyper casual games. And as far as the concern of quality is, we talk about quality. I would say that what actually people do, as far as I have experienced it, what we all do is that we make a game, and we don't watch the user behavior. We don't go after the game analytics. We always run after improving the game in terms of quality, in terms of graphics, in terms of performance. We're not really into user behavior. So what I have to say is that if any one of us have to make a game successful, we should rather go after the user performance, user behavior, how user is actually playing your game, how user is navigating through the screens while he's running your game. This is the most important part, I would say, that we all should focus on if we want our game to be successful. Whenever you launch any of the game, you have to make sure that your users get enough of the information that you try to put in your game, but people are not able to get that. People are not able to access those features. So we must say that that is where most of us lack. We don't go after user behavior in our game. So this is the point we should work on in order to make our game successful. And obviously, in addition, quality is a must-have feature in our game.
Yeah, but what I've noticed is that usually the up and coming and small and medium sized game developers, they're looking for easy money, easy revenues. So they don't really
Exactly.
put that much effort into the quality of the game, and they usually clone or reskin the games, existing games, and then launch them and maybe work around the placeholders and everything, which is very unfortunate. But again, I think this is the sad reality of the industry, that quite a lot of game developers do that. And I think I remember in 2018, Google actually suspended the accounts of a lot of these game publishers as well, which
Yes.
was primarily due to the same reason, because quantity was being focused, not the quality.
Exactly.
Yeah, hundreds of accounts was blocked by Google, and lots of companies, like I know many companies in Pakistan, which actually vanished when this happened.
Yeah.
And the reason
And
for
not only small. Rizwan, you said. I'm just listening.
yeah,
I'll say after you.
another reason for another reason why people think or they believe that making hyper casual is easier is because it seems like it does not really involve any game design. Yeah,
Mm.
I said it seems, but it is actually not like that. Every good game involves a good amount of good quantity of game design. So the developers or the game studios which believe that they do not really want to invest that much amount of time into game design, or who really want to launch the games quickly because they have been in habit of doing so, uh, because they have been like making clones of other games. So they think that game design is not that much important, and they can launch a game without much of game design. So that is why they go after hyper casual. But
Yeah.
after being like I have get one game published already and second one is in the process, I can easily tell you that this is now how it is. If you really want to make a good game, no matter if it is a casual or a hyper casual, you really have to work on your game design. You really have to pick up on the player psychology and see what actually they want to play or what actually they can appreciate.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think this
that's
is exactly the type of value that we're trying to add for our audience. Yes, David.
sorry about that. It's just it's funny you say we should focus on game design with products, because publishers are much more interested in having like many ideas thrown at the wall as fast as possible. I've had more than one hyper casual publisher explicitly tell me, like, before you make anything, come to us first, because where you might make 30 products in a year, we make 200 plus advertising campaigns per month. So they see the same games over and over again. And a lot of the time they'll sit there and go, I don't know why this is successful. It's the same as half a dozen or a dozen other games I put through, but this one came back with metrics that are wildly different to the rest. So I don't know if it's as simple as just being able to say it's all game design and I'm a game designer. So like that's my thing. I think there's other influences in the market, the consequences of how we do our monetization, the way publishers interact with the market itself, by what products they put money into. There's much more than just like execution is important. You have to make a good feeling game, but I think there's much more to it than that.
It is the same thing, Mohammed. We were discussing the other day. I will be naming the company again, but they just come up with a game and they put like $3-4 million in 10 days, and they just bring the game up. And other day I was talking to Mohammed, and I told him with my experience with one of the game from hyper casual game publisher. That game was ranking on almost all of the keywords. They were even not relevant to that game, but that game was ranking among number one in all of the charts, believe me. And it was so strange to see that game ranking above my game on my very relevant keyword. And I was shocked to see it was all just because the very aggressive campaign, I would say. So that is the same thing that David wanted to say, that it is not only the game quality. It depends on how you hit the market and how hard you hit the market with the finances, the money you're pitching in.
Mm.
So I totally agree with David on it.
Great.
I
Yeah,
agree
yeah,
on that, but I agree that the money that publishers put into the market really matters, but in a longer term, when they actually have to go and make the game scalable, that's where the game quality comes into play. So I have worked with dozen of publishers. We have submitted dozens of games to the publishers, and we have worked on lots of ideas from the publishers as well. So in the end, at least in my experience, what actually matters is that the core concept that you have picked up, the way that you have executed your concept, and the quality that you have put into your product, that's what actually make a difference. Like you can put $100,000 into a game marketing and you can hit the chart. That's no big deal. But the actual deal is that how long you can sustain that. So only the game which have been which is good on the basics, which have been developed keeping the player's psychology in mind and the core principles of game design, only such type of games can sustain. Otherwise, you can see games coming onto the chart and going down the drain in few days of time. Yeah.
yeah. I completely
I
agree.
you resort on this, but don't you think the dynamics of monetization have been changed over the past few years? The thing you were saying that the quality of the game does matter to in order to make it successful in a longer run. But what people are doing is that they make a game, they put like let's say $1 million and they take $2 million out of it, and it doesn't hide them that the game goes to drain in like 30 days, 25 days. That's what companies are doing actually. They don't care that the game is successful in a longer run or not. Everyone is, I mean, after making money, they don't care that the game runs for a longer time. But yes, that's very true that if you want your game to be successful in a longer run, the quality is the key. I mean, you cannot sustain on App Store or Play Store without quality. I totally agree on
So
this.
Kashif, actually, if you look at the model that publishers are actually working on, I agree to that. That for them, for them, it does not really matter how the game is made, if it has quality or not. For them, what actually matters is its LTV is higher than its CPI.
Yep.
Or in simpler words, if you can make more money than you actually spend on the marketing, the game is good enough for the publisher. But
Yep.
that's the
Exactly.
publisher. That is a successful model for publisher. As a game studio or as a game developer, that's not a win-win model for me because I can get one game published, two game published, at max three game published in a year. But those three games are not going to give me enough money so that I can sustain my studio in a longer run, right? I have to make games which enable me or which earn me enough money so that I can sustain my studio in a longer run and make better quality games, right? So I would like to earn $100,000 a day. Hyper casual game is not going to take you there.
Yeah.
Yep, they can take the
Yeah,
publishers there,
I totally
but as
agree
a
with
game
you.
developer, they cannot take me there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
You're
think we
right.
had a good debate on this specific point, and I think it's a very important point in terms of learning for the small and medium game publishers because they should now understand if they're listening to us that the chances of success lies in the quality then not in the quantity and not on the promotion part is because it won't be sustainable.
Well, you
I
can
think
get short-term success, no doubt, but
yeah,
if you really want to, if you're in a serious business, then you really have to
yeah,
work on your game and your product.
yeah, totally agreed. So I think moving on, I think then the connectivity really, started to come into the mobile gaming industry because around 80% of internet users own a smartphone. So there is no surprise that the mobile games now require connectivity more than before. So that also paved the way for in-app purchases and to show ads in the middle of games and also the option of multiple players playing at the same time. So it also means that a lot of games these days which are being launched, they require internet connection as a must. But before the we had internet access easily available to us. I think we could just download a game and play it right away. Now it's not the case. You need an internet connection to play the game. Very less quantity of games are available which do not require internet connection, and they are good. So you might have very small, hyper casual sort of games, but not the bigger ones or with good quality. They always require an internet connection. So, and now we have ad networks, mediation platforms like Consolia ads, monetization strategies, app store optimization expert. It is an altogether a job that you need a guy for this now. This was not the case before, because this is how the industry has shaped over the years. So we have new roles emerging now. We have new strategies now. So I think here I'd like to ask David, how has the journey been for you in Australia, where fast and reliable connectivity was available well before it was to the other parts of the world? And how did monetization made its way through that?
Yeah, internet connectivity is an interesting topic. Like a lot of our players, we find will turn their internet connection off, and they still expect the product to work even after they've done that. And you can get so far with like buffering your ads and that sort of thing, but they really want their cake and to eat it as well. In Australia, that's no different. Like we haven't found a dramatic change in mobile like game consumption between different markets in that context. We find that there are other businesses built around how games work that mean our metrics change depending on what part of the world you go into. So for instance, like if we do a large advertising campaign that hits, say, the Middle East and India and lower parts of Asia and stuff, we'll get a lot more like activity, but like the amount of return you get from your advertising changes dramatically. You go to America, obviously it's quite different.
Yeah.
In terms of like how that's changed the way our games work, that's really interesting as well, because it used to be we want leaderboards, we want social activity and all of that sort of thing. Then it was we want multiplayer, which is great. And now it's we want multiplayer, but we don't really, because we've got a lot of fake multiplayer games in the world. And so people they're happy to have the challenge provided by an AI, but they don't want to know that it's just an AI, and they don't tend to notice once they've turned off their internet connection that they're still getting players, air quotes, in their game. And so that all like the market is just very strange around the way it works with connectivity at the moment.
Yeah, another thing I
and
would
what
like
about
to add to David's thing, that another reason of adding an internet requirement to the game is to show ads, because obviously ads are
exactly?
primarily the monetization thing. So this is another factor that every other game, every second game requires an active internet connection in order to operate, and you cannot play the game without an internet connection. So this is another
Yeah.
reason, in addition to all of those David already told.
Yeah, I guess absolutely. I think internet paved the way for monetization, uh, and now I
Yes.
think you need internet connection, whether the game requires an internet connection, whether the gameplay actually requires internet connection or not, but you need an internet connection in order to show ads and
Yeah,
make money out of
exactly. Exactly.
it.
It's actually really interesting the way you have to like justify the internet connection. You got to do just enough that a
Exactly.
player's happy with it, and they're not going to get upset about the fact that it needs to be always on internet. But if you do too much, then you've got a whole other set of overheads to consider. Good.
Yeah, as long as ad serving is concerned, I think you require very even the weakest internet connection would do. So the actual challenge is when you are playing real-time multiplayer games. Even in real-time multiplayer games, as David said, that uh, people do not really bother even if the internet connection is disconnected and the game is actually playing as a fake multiplayer. So what I have understood from this behavior is that people actually want a sense of connectivity, not a real connectivity. So as long
Yeah.
as the AI player is running, it's shooting you or whatever its behavior, as long as it's doing, no one actually bothers if it is connected or not. And that's actually a good thing, I believe.
Hmm.
It makes the life easier for the game developer and the game designer.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right. So I guess having talked about all of that, I think if we briefly touch upon the what the future of mobile gaming industry holds for us, I think uh, we've seen quite a lot of debate around augmented reality and virtual reality for some years now, and how these technologies are going to be the next big thing in the, not just the gaming industry, but all over the user experience in general. Then we also saw that products like Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and Google Glass are also being made, again to mesmerize us or impress us with this new technology. However, until now, I think there hasn't been quite a lot of success, specifically in terms of AR and VR, mobile and video games. Apart from Pokemon Go, I think, which was sort of a fad, I guess, because it did not have a consistent success over the years. But as the industry, evolves at a very rapid pace, I think the next 5 to 10 years are going to be very interesting in terms of what we will see in terms of technological advancements. So, Rizwan, I think I'd like to ask you, what are your thoughts on AR and VR in general? And do you think the game publishers have any focus towards making games related to these technologies?
Well, and VR are around for some time now. We have decent devices, but I don't see that too many games coming on AR or VR in near future. By near future, I would say like 2 3 years. Publisher that I have been talking to, or the publisher that I have been following, uh, I don't see any huge investment in AR or VR gaming. Rather, the big
Right.
studios are actually making investment in some other areas. So I don't expect that we can see lots of people wearing headsets and banging each other on the roads very soon. Probably it will take some time.
Hmm. Great. Your thoughts, Kashif?
Mohammed, I would say that gaming is more of back into 2013 or 14 when the hyper casual games were introduced. After that, gaming is more of a time pass. A very few percentage of people actually plays big games like Clash of Clans, Asphalt 9, PUBG. There is a very little percentage, but the majority, the most of the people, let's say I took a tram of 15 minutes to another station, and what would I do during that 15 minutes? I'll just open a game of just like a Flappy Bird and
Yeah.
just tap, 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 and I'll pass my time.
Yeah.
So the basic reason of VR and AR not being that successful as we were expecting is that it
True.
needs special apparatus, the Oculus and
Yeah.
VR glasses or the other things. So this is the main reason it is not that successful as we were expecting. But yes,
Mm.
there will be a time. I mean, there was a time when we didn't expect that face call will ever happen, FaceTime will ever happen. So there will be a
Yeah.
time, maybe in 10 years or 15 years, then everyone will be, wearing the VR glasses, just like today everyone is wearing AirPods or carrying the gadgets. So there will be a time, but yes, I totally agree with Rizwan, but not in near future. But yes, we'll have it as a trend in like 10 or 15 years maybe.
Yeah. Okay. And I think before we move on to the questions, how can we not talk about Apple's IDFA policy change? And we've been hearing that Google is also soon to um, follow this practice as well. So I think there are some other challenges as well. Google frequently changes the policies and then account suspensions and whatnot. So David, do you think there are any current challenges apart from this IDFA thing, and any other frequent policy changes or any other technological or tool related um, challenges that you feel are currently being faced?
It's interesting. I've seen a few different ways to get around Apple's collection policies, and for a lot of games it is get around. It's not just like, oh, we can just stop doing this, that, or something else. Like the consequences of Apple's decisions in regards to privacy meant that like a bunch of advertising campaigns we ran, there was just no point in running them on Apple's devices. There was no metrics to be gained. There was nothing to tell me about player interaction or player behavior.
Hmm.
I've had some people talk to me about how I should advertise through them because they know of a bunch of loopholes through like cookies and a bunch of other stuff. I've had there are other games out there where they've got like an inbuilt button basically before you can run the app that just says we're going to ignore all this stuff and you're okay with it or else you can't use our game. Like on our end, apart from the fact that we can't apart from the fact that we can't get the data that helps us make the game better for specific players, it really doesn't affect us overly much. And I think a lot of hyper casual game developers in particular probably won't be overly affected by it, because it's much more sweeping changes for like personal data and stuff that we're not overly possessive about. It sort of depends.
Yeah, I guess so. The first thing that I noticed when IDFA changes were implemented was that in some of the underdeveloped countries like Pakistan and India, the permission ratio or the percentage of people allowing their data sharing was quite less, because they always thought, no, this is our personal data, we won't be sharing. But I think it was the opposite in the more developed part of the world, where people realized that showing relevant ads is more important than getting irrelevant ads all the time. And that is the reason why over the past few months the adoption rate of IDFA is improving. And I think if yeah, and if Google follows this, I think the numbers should be the same. As people start realizing that they want to see relevant ads, I think they would start to follow or allow their data to be shared. I think, but this topic requires a separate discussion, because it's quite big topic, consumer privacy and everything. So we'll try to cover it in our next series of webinars. So right then, I think we had a very productive discussion around the mobile gaming industry in general, and I think our audience must have learned a thing or two about what areas to focus on while developing games. We also have some very good, interesting questions from the audience, and let me just take one question. Yeah. So there's one question. Do you think governments and service providers have made contributions to this evolution in terms of policies, discounts, tools, and investments? I'll start with Rizwan.
Well, as far as governments are concerned, particularly in our region, I don't think that government has played a huge role. Like I can see that in Turkey, government has facilitated the game developers, and you can see the results. So every fourth or fifth game in the charts is from Turkey these days. But in our region, I don't think that government has played much role. Service providers, or you can say the products which are available, that definitely have played a huge role. For example, if we take Unity 3D itself, so the way Unity 3D has made the game development easier is a dream come true. So before Unity, it was like much more difficult. And then the tools or the analytics like game analytics or Google's Firebase, or like other tools that we use to analyze the user behavior in our game. Similarly, like the Google AdMob, which helps you serve the games, or MoPub, which are actually a good mediation. So these type of things, they have really played a huge role in making the games financially viable for developers.
Right. David, would you like to add something?
Yeah, so government's always a complicated topic. You're always a bit worried you'll step on someone's toes, but we certainly have a very conservative government, as our federal government, at least in Australia. It was only recently that a bunch of specific people got involved in local, like state government, and created a rebate, which in theory will attract a lot of larger companies to South Australia. Basically, like they spend over $500,000 and they get a 10% rebate. And then the federal government sort of followed suit and gave a 30% rebate on top of that, just for coming to Australia. These are really good for attracting investment, but they're not very good at building up like a local industry. And what we've found over the years has been that local industry, sort of after the global financial crisis, after those studios fell apart, the local industry wants to exist because of organizations like the Academy of Interactive Entertainment working hard to build like a trade base. But there's no one to hire all these devs, and so they have to go off and make their own studios. And that sort of stuff does have a really big impact on, say, the mobile gaming space, because its entry, it's like the cost of entry is so low that those devs can get work relatively easy. At least they can try to get work. They can try to make it work. They can build a game in their own like backyard and then put it out. So it's a weird situation where a lack of support from government has created a bunch of like lots of indie devs, and now there's suddenly all these large rebates. So we're hoping it will attract bigger companies to hire on a lot of that talent. Around that, then there's like, you're talking about service providers. So in the 90s in Australia, we had like effectively a nationalized telco, and it got privatized. That's done all sorts of strange things to the way internet works in Australia as well. Like, we've had whole governments like base election campaigns on whether they're going to make good internet or not. And then like their opposition's like, we'll make it but cheaper. And as a result, the national broadband network, a thing that was supposed to be finished like 5 years ago, is still just a mess for so many Australians. But on the other hand, there's lots of money there for other organizations to get into. It's really interesting the consequences government has had on the game development industry in Australia, positive and negative.
That's a very interesting information that you just shared. I don't think that other governments are doing the same in terms of promoting the industry and attracting the local talent. So I think we have another good question. It's very relevant. I think should we have a very good discussion around it. So the question is how to effectively manage in-app advertising without compromising on user experience. How many placeholders ads do you think should be enough? So Kashif, would you like to take lead?
Yeah. All right. So as far as the number of ads are concerned, you see there are different type of ads. Like we talk about banner ads, interstitial ads, and rewarded ads. So what I believe is that the type of ad which irritates the most is the interstitial ad. Neither banner ads nor rewarded video ad hurts that much, because rewarded video is something user is putting his or her consent to watch that ad to in order to buy some digital currency or a skin or something. And the banner ad, if unless or until it is not hurting your gaming experience, the playing experience, it doesn't hurt the user. So it depends on how you are actually planning to monetize your game by showing ads. As far as interstitial ads are concerned, I would like to say that we should only show it maximum one time during the entire gameplay, the game session. But as far as banner ads, and it's always there. And rewarded videos, it is totally as per the user's decision to watch the banner ad, rewarded video as much as the times he or she wants to. So interstitial ads, yes, we should show it maximum one time during the game session, because it irritates the most.
Right. What about you, Rizwan?
Well, I think it actually depends upon the game genre or the game loop that you have built. So we have some games where we can easily show 4 to 5 interstitial ads, because there are logical breaks in the game where actually you can show the game. You can show the ads, and there are some games where you cannot really show interstitial, as it would spoil the user experience. Particularly, for example, if you are playing a game where which is actually sort of endless, you have not built levels on that. Okay, you have seen games like horror style games which are sort of endless. You just start the game and you have to complete it. So in such games, definitely you cannot show interstitial ads. You have very limited capacity of showing rewarded ads as well. But it all depends upon how you have designed your game. My advice for people is that if you're actually going to build a new game, you should think from very scratch on how you are going to introduce ads. Because if you don't do that, and later on you just insert the ads in between the levels or at odd places, that's really going to hurt your game experience. So you have to think about the game and where you can show the ads from ground up.
It's interesting because it can also depend on your ad mediation. As crazy as that sounds, like we've found that with one provider, banner ads do really well. And in theory, they don't affect the player's experience much. We're still running tests around retention and that sort of thing. But in practice, they can make you a lot of money just by having banner ads, but only with a specific ad mediator that does that. Whereas a different ad mediator, you're way better off just taking rewarded ads every time. And you could build very different games around those two ideas, right? Like a banner ad game works well for an endless. But rewarded ads that in theory are always doing well needs a nice robust economy. So it's not just that the game you're trying to make, you make the ads for it, but it almost dictates the type of game you're building in a lot of cases, depending on what kind of ads you want to put into that product.
Yeah, understood. And so I think we can take one more question because time is running out. Uh, so I think we'll go with this one. How are Google and Apple different in terms of advertising, revenue policies, and do you have separate strategies for both platforms? Who'd like to go first? Rizwan?
Well, the policies are different, but not too much different. Usually, Apple take lead on introducing new policies, and then Google follows. That's what I
Mhm.
have seen. So, as far as ads are concerned, I think the policies do not really differ too much. The actual difference is that on Apple you can earn much better from the ads. At least it's at least 2 to 5 times of Google. So, but they are relatively strict on user policies. They review the game. They used to review the games manually, and now Google has started doing that as well. So there's a difference in earning. There's a lot of difference in policies. I don't think there's a lot of difference. So sooner or later, Google will follow the same line that Apple is going on.
Yeah, I think Apple has been quite strict right from the start. They usually had a manual approval process, whereas Google did not usually had that in place. And until last couple of years or so, they're just starting with more stricter, and your apps take time in approval process. So yeah, I think, but I agree to your point that going forward, it's going to be the same for both Apple and Google in terms of uh, policies and whatnot. Okay, just one quick question. What is the future of gaming industry for the medium game studios? So we're not talking about the large ones. How do you see the medium game publishers would be?
Well, I
I
think
mean, the
the
future is
future is right. You just have to have some strategy, okay, and have some business model. So if you think that you will build a game and you will be successful, that's not really a strategy. So you really have to pick up which games you have to build, and you have to make sure that the ideas or the games or the genres that you pick up are actually popular or are actually going to work. So the future is bright as long as you have some solid strategy and you can stick to your strategy, and you can say enough financials to support your strategy for a decent amount of time.
I agree.
Yeah, I also agree. You'll just have to stick around and keep improving yourself and the games you're producing. So the future is bright. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I think in the light of the discussion that we had, I think it's important that we focus on quality, user experience, and not just try to clone every other thing that you see on the Google and Apple Store.
Well,
So I
maybe
think the
it's
key
okay
here
to
is
clone. Maybe
yeah,
it's okay to clone for some time to make some money so that you can make a better game. But if your strategy is that you'll keep cloning and you'll keep winning, that's not going to work.
Exactly.
yeah. I think we had this discussion, and it's pretty loud and clear that for a new and up and coming mid-sized gaming studio, that is very important that you keep that in mind to not run after easy money and focus on quality and everything. Right then, I think we've had a pretty good discussion. We've got questions as well. I'd like to thank all of the speakers for their time, and I hope the audience has, learned what the gaming industry has been about, what the future trends hold, how Apple and Google influences, and what the policy changes usually impacts. And I think we can look for bright for the gaming industry. I think it's continuing to grow. So yeah, I think happy times are coming ahead. Thanks a lot, guys. I think we had a very good discussion.
Thanks for having
Thank you
us.
so much.
Thanks, Mohammed.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Kashif.
All right,
Yeah.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.